Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. In this video, incredibly exciting video, if you're a Gloomspite Gitz fan, I'm going to be going through all of the rules and all of the war scrolls for the Gloomspite Gitz battle pack, so you can play with your Gloomspite Gitz army. This is going to be a guide, and it's going to be one of a few videos that I am going to make for the Gloomspite Gitz. Obviously, right now, I'm going to talk about all of the abilities and all of the ways in which you can kind of like understand. I'm going to try and help you understand the rules. This will also later be accompanied by when the points come out and how you build your different units. We're going to analyze these things. Hopefully this means that this video is fairly evergreen, because some points will change over the course of an edition, or even some of the special rules will change. So hopefully this will be a good review until the Gloomspite Gitz book comes out, or until, some other things. So there'll be a couple of videos. There'll be a tier list video later where we review all the units, and that'll be obviously in context with points. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the battle traits. And if you have any thoughts about any of this or any questions, please do leave them in the comments below. I'm super excited to review this, so let's jump into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the battle traits. So battle traits that you can see here are what are rules that are going to affect your entire Gloomspite Gitz army. So with your Gloomspite Gitz, these are going to affect your whole army, which is nice. And these are kind of like thematic ways in which your army can play. The power that you have for a Gloomspite Gitz army is the power of the bad moon, And it's got like basically two descriptions on the battle traits page. The first one is under the light of the bad moon, and this describes where the bad moon will be and also what units it'll affect. It starts in the corner of a board and it affects all of the units in that corner. Then when it gets to the center, it affects all units on the board, and then it moves on the other side and then it affects units in that table quarter. You just divide a table into quarters. It's super simple. When a unit while the Bad Moon's location is a quarter of the battlefield, while the Bad Moon's location is the center of the battlefield, it's all of them. And while a friendly Gloomspite Gitz unit is under the light of the Bad Moon, the appropriate effect below applies for it. Okay, so if your unit is affected by it, you're going to get that bonus. The first one is Frothing Zealots. If the unit is a non-Squig Moonclan unit, and you will find those keywords, these are what we call keywords, and they're located at the bottom of the War Scrolls. When we look at the War Scrolls later, you'll see, but non-Squig Moonclan. So it needs to have the Moonclan keyword, but not the Squig keyword. Add 3 to its control score, and that can be pretty effective, because some of those units can get quite a lot of bodies on the board, and control score is used for holding objectives. +3 to the score is not the same as to the value. So when the value is 1, let's say some stabbers have got the value of 1, then you've got 20 stabbers, then that'll be 20 lots of 1 +3, not 20 lots of 4, where you have added 3. So it's +3 to the control score, which is the cumulative total of the value. Hopefully that's the last time I'll explain it. So that's Frothing Zealots, which is kind of fine, but I don't know right now. It's too early. We haven't reviewed anything yet. We don't know if there's going to be really good control devalue armies or control buff armies. We'll have to see. Next one is Gnasha-Squigs. If the unit is a Squig unit, you can reroll the random characteristic roll for its move characteristic, which is nice, which means these are much more effective. When we go look at Boingrot Bounderz, which in my personal opinion can do an absolute ton of damage, being able to reroll the ability, how far that goes, is really nice. It's reroll the movement or any random characteristic. Then Moonlight Hide. I think this one feels like the most obviously powerful one. If the unit is a Troggoth unit, you add 1 to its save rolls, which is so nice. I personally think that's really impactful. So I think this is going to be, obviously it's going to work really well with command abilities for +1 save, so that's nice. And then Spiderfang Venom. If the unit is a Spiderfang unit, its combat attack score critical hits on an unmodified hit roll of 5+. When we go through this video, we will keep talking about the bonuses you can get from this, but do remember them. Lastly, it goes on to describe when the moon starts to move, and that's done once per battle round, and it's at the start of the battle round. That is when you decide where it's going to be. So, for instance, if it's the first battle round, you pick a quarter of the battlefield to be the bad moon starting location. Okay. However, so at the start of each battle round, you'll declare to use this ability. And if multiple players are commanding a Gloomspite Gitz army, then instead, the start of the battle round, those players roll off, and only the winner declares and uses this ability in this battle round, which is honestly thematic as hell. 2 Gitz players, and they're wrestling for the moon is exactly what the bad moon would want. However, so when you start first battle round, pick a table quarter if it's just you. That's what you're doing, right? Super simple. And if it's a second or subsequent battle round, you roll a dice. On a 1 to 3, the Bad Moon stays at its current location. On a 4+, the Bad Moon will move. The first time the Bad Moon moves, it moves to the center of the battlefield. The second time it moves to the other diagonal quarter. And the third time it moves from the battlefield. It has no further effect. So one of the strengths of this is it obviously gives a lot of bonuses to your army, but one of the weaknesses is you can't control where it is much, and also in addition, it could just move off the board and you could lose your allegiance ability. I think Gitz players are generally fairly comfortable with that. It's really thematic, but also it does mean you have to really understand where your army is going to be to like follow the moon, which again is really thematic, but other armies have got allegiance abilities just work all the time. So, you know, like it's a bit of like a coin toss, but ultimately, that's what it is, and that's what it does. So with your battle traits, you also get a piece of terrain. And the Bad Moon Loonshrine is incredibly famous and is going to be a bit of a nightmare to paint. So what about the Bad Moon Loonshrine? Well, it's got 14 health and a 4-up save. And faction terrain in Age of Sigmar 4 can be destroyed. And that is a problem if you're a Gitz player, specifically because you're going to be able to have the ability to bring back units with it. So let's talk about what it does, and let's talk about the fact that you're going to have to be protecting the Loonshrine. 14 health, 4-up save. Okay, it doesn't move. First one is a passive. So the first ability that it has is a passive. Friendly Gloomspite Gitz units are under the light of the Bad Moon while they're wholly within 12 inches of this terrain feature. So if the moon does move out of your table quarter, or move into the middle of the board, or even off the board, you still have the ability to get that light of the Bad Moon, which is quite nice. And then finally, you have a command ability. That's what the little 1 number at the top means, which is done once per turn. So once per turn for the whole army, so you can do it once, at the end of your turn. It's called Moonclan Layers. You pick a friendly non-hero, non-monster, non-war machine, a Gloomspite Gitz unit that has been destroyed to be the target, so that'll be infantry and cavalry. You set up a replacement unit. Again, those keywords are located at the bottom of the war scrolls. Set up a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit, rounding up, wholly within 12 inches of this terrain feature, and more than 3 inches from all enemy units. So that's a great ability. I've got 6 Rockgut Troggoths. They get killed. Sad. We're all sad about that. RIP. But then you're able to bring 3 back. Really good. Really fun. Little bit of a problem in that it has to be, you know, wholly within 12 inches of the Loonshrine. So you kind of want to, you know, return them quite deep into the battle, which means you might want to put your Loonshrine further forward. But that also means your opponent can charge it and kill it. And that is going to be a really interesting mechanic in Age of Sigmar 4. Is it survivable enough with 14 health and a 4-up save? I don't know. You're going to have to tell me. But it's going to be really important for your army because you just have this inherent recursion built into your special rules, but it's located around a terrain piece. Some armies have recursion or returning models and units built into their battle traits, but this one is one that your opponent can destroy. That's going to be a problem for you, but also it can return loads of models, which is a great thing for you. So it's your, like, you've got to work hard to defend this piece. Now we're going to look at the battle formation. So when you write your army list, you'll choose one of these 4 different battle formations to affect your army. And basically, if you're taking loads of Squigs, you'll choose a Squigalanch. If you're taking loads of Truggs, you'll take the Trugg Herd. And if you're taking loads of Spiders, you'll choose the Spider one. It's that simple, really. They add bonuses to the units that you're probably taking in your Gloomspite Gitz army. So the first one is Squigalanch. It's a passive, so it's going to affect everyone. And it's Bouncing Fury. Each time a friendly Squig unit charges, so keyword at the bottom of the war scroll, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of its fang-filled gobs, which is its melee attack profile, massive fang-filled gobs, and huge fang-filled gobs for the rest of the turn. +1 attack's characteristic is really nice, especially when you have a lot of models. So if you have a unit of 5 or 10 or 15, adding 15 attacks is very nice, and it's every time the unit charges. So I would personally think that's very good. It makes Squigs really nice. Squigs apparently are the best. The next one is Trogg Herd, and it's called Herd Healing, the ability. Each time a friendly Troggoth unit, again, keyword at the bottom, uses a fight ability, so when it fights, after the ability has been resolved, you heal D3, which means you'll just return 3 lost health to one of the, you know, to the unit, which is really nice because it's every single time. So we like that a lot. We already know we're getting +1 save from the light of the Bad Moon, so now they're survivable and they're healing. Very, very nice. Next one is the Moonclan Scrap, and the ability is called Spreading Lunacy. You do this once per turn at the end of your turn, and you can only do it the one time at the end of your turn. So it's not in both turns, so it's already a little bit weaker. And you pick 3 friendly non-Squig Moonclan units. So that'll be, your stabbers or your shooters. In combat to be the targets. For each target, you make a pile-in move with that target, and that can be really good, as my friend Pete in the chat has pointed out, for possibly moving models onto objectives, scoring more points, getting more bodies to control objectives. And then pick an enemy. Then you would pick an enemy unit in combat with a target and roll a d3. On a 2+, you inflict that many mortal damage. So the mortal damage is pretty lackluster, unless you're piling in all those 3 into a couple of monsters, or something that really doesn't want to have mortal damage applied to it. That can be quite nice. It's useless into a big horde, but really good into some elite models. And in fact, you might end up piling more models into an objective and then killing that last model that's holding the objective, and therefore meaning you grab it, which is really nice. The next one is Spiderfang's Stalk Tribe, and the passive ability is Realm Web Ambush. Each time a friendly Skitterstrand Arachnarok, which is a big spider on an insanely big base, uses the Realm Web Lurker ability. This is an ability where you're able, when you're deploying your army, to put that model into reserve or into deep strike, so off the board, and it's going to ambush later. You're allowed to pick another friendly Spiderfang unit to also use that ability. So again, keyword at the bottom, so you can put another Spiderfang unit in with it and then deep strike them on, which is really interesting, especially if you think about things like being able to cast spells in your opponent's turn, being able to do manifestations in your opponent's turn, so maybe bringing in a Spiderweb Shaman to drop a manifestation really close, using those command abilities to do a spell in your opponent's turn. You can get really techie with that. And in addition, each time a friendly Skitterstrand Arachnarok uses the Ambush from Beyond ability, which is where they bring them on, you can bring that said unit. So basically, you can take a unit off with you, and then you can bring that unit on in reserve, wholly within 12 inches of the Skitterstrand Arachnarok, but outside of 9 inches of the enemy unit, because you're using the Ambush from Beyond ability. So those are your choices. Basically, you're going to go all spiders, and maybe you're going to take a Skitterstrand Arachnarok. You're going to use Realm Web Ambush, Spread of Lunacy if you're taking loads of just regular stabbers, Herd Healing for Troggs, and then Bouncing Fury for the big Squigs. So when you write in your army list, one of your characters can have a heroic trait, and there are 3 to choose from. You have the Clammy Hand, Being Loon Touched, and Fight Another Day. The Clammy Hand is actually really good, especially if you want to run Troggs, because each time a friendly Gloomspite Gitz uses a unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit uses the Rally command, which is a command ability, you can make 3 additional rally rolls of a d6. You roll 6 dice, so this means it will be 9 dice. If you ended up having a banner bearer, you would roll an additional dice for 10 dice. And only 4-ups, you can heal that many wounds or return that many slain models. The reason this is good for Troggs is because when you roll 6 dice, you're unlikely to get enough 4-ups to be able to return a slain Trogg. However, with rolling 9 dice, you're more likely to be able to do it and therefore be able to return a slain one, because you can only return a model up to the amount that you've rolled or you've got the heal statistic for. Does that make sense? So I love that. I think that's really good. Good for Trogg players. Next one is Loon Touched. If this unit is not a wizard, it has the Wizard 1, which means it can cast a spell. Otherwise, add 1 to the casting roll to this unit. I think +1 to cast is pretty spicy. In addition to, obviously, if you've looked at the terrain packs, you can see you can get an additional +1 to cast from a place of power. And I think you're going to do a lot of spell casting in this army. And the last one is super spicy, in my opinion. It's called Fight Another Day. This is done in any combat phase, which means, say it with me, every combat phase. And the effect is, if this unit is in combat, you roll a dice. On a 3+, this unit can immediately use a retreat ability, as if it were your movement phase, which is to move out of combat or out of combat range, without any mortal damage being inflicted on it, which normally happens. Now, the reason this is really, really spicy is because of how combat and the phases work. So, if I and you were playing a game, and I was the active player, I would use all of my abilities, and then you would use all of your abilities, which means if you were using Fight Another Day, you roll a 3-up and you get out of dodge, because then we would start using fight abilities. But that means, as long as you roll a 3-up, no one can ever swing at your unit that has Fight Another Day. Another spicy bit of news is whenever you charge, so you do a charge ability, you charge in, then you're in the combat phase, use this ability to retreat out. Why would I retreat out? Maybe you just want to get somewhere else on the board, But importantly, also means you're still going to be able to make a 3-inch pile in. So what you could do is charge in something that, let's say, is always strike first. Then what you can do is you can move a retreat out using fight another day, as long as you roll a 3 up. And then you can pile in later and then hit them first, which is quite nice. So overall, these are quite spicy. Really fun combos here. Okay, also when you're writing your army list, one of your heroes can have an Artifact of Power. These are the Troglodytic treasures, and there are 3 of them. The first one is the Clammy Cowl, which does not interact with a Clammy Hand, which has got me in the chat furious right now. Hate that. But this is probably the best one, where you subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target this unit. What has happened in Age of Sigmar 4 is Games Workshop has re-envisioned how lots of attacks have been working. Why this is important, it means some of the major hitters in the game only hit on 4s. -1 to hit against them is going to make them very sad. So it's really good. This is also going to affect shooting as well. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for all attacks that target this unit. Clammy Cowl is probably going to be what you take. Next one is once per battle, and it's the end of any turn, you can use the Backstabber's Blade. Well, I don't think this is great. You could have some real fun with this. You pick an enemy hero in combat with this unit to be the target. You roll a dice on a 2+, inflict that amount of mortal damage. So if you roll a 6, you're going to do 6 mortal damage. Now, in my personal opinion, like that's not that impactful. But you could build this fun assassin build to go kill a hero, which I think is fun. So go ahead and have a crazy time with that. And the next one is the Leering Git Shield. Each time an unmodified hit roll for an attack that targets this unit is a 1, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the attack ability has been resolved. Now, normally what you would want is you want a really survivable character that can take a lot of damage. So your opponent tries to hit them with like loads of attacks, and then they take a bunch of mortal damage for rolling 1s. But they're as likely to roll 1s as they are to roll 6s. And I don't think you're necessarily going to have anything that's going to survive as much that the Leering Git Shield is going to be super useful, unless you build like a very small little hero and his job is just to missile into the enemy unit that's got the most attacks available, which again could be very, very funny. But it feels like the Clammy Cowl and generally being clammy is the advantage here for the Git. So the spells you can take in your army are from the lore of the Clammy Dank. So this is going to get very clammy. When you write your army list for Age of Sigmar 4, you'll choose a spell lore. You'll obviously choose the lore of the Clammy Dank. And then all of the wizards in your army will know them, and Sneaky Distraction is a spell that any of your wizards can cast multiple times in a turn. They can't cast it multiple times themselves, but each wizard can cast it, whereas the other 2 ones you can only cast once in your turn. Okay. So the first one, Sneaky Distraction, is cast on a 7, and as I've said, it's an unlimited spell. And effectively, you cast it, and then everyone, any enemy unit holier than 12 inches, until the start of your next turn, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they're holier than 12 inches of the caster. Now, if we take the Clammy Cowl as well, then that means that the enemy unit is -2. This is capped at -1, but if they add +1 to hit, then they're still going to be -1. So this is a nice way of ensuring that there's a lot of minuses to hit, and that can be incredibly effective in Age of Sigmar 4 because lots of stuff hits on 4s, as I've talked about. The next one is Hand of Gork, and these won't stack. So if I have 2 wizards that both cast this spell, they won't make a unit -2. You need another effect to add an additional -1. They don't stack with each other because an enemy unit can't be affected by the same ability twice. Okay, the Hand of Gork. Pick a friendly, it's cast on a 7, and you can only cast it the once. Pick a friendly Gloomspite Gitz wizard to cast this spell, and pick a visible friendly unit holier than 12 inches of them, and not in combat to be the target. Then make a casting roll 2d6. Remove the target from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield, wholly within 24 inches of the caster, and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So obviously a teleport is good. Great. We love that. Any teleport, repositioning units, moving like either big blocks of infantry to grab objectives or, something else, shooting units, whatever it might be. But ladies and gentlemen, let's start talking about the command abilities that you can use. So you can cast this spell in your opponent's turn. Nice. We love that. So imagine we've got a little goblin in a corner that can cast a spell. Let's call him, what did we decide we were going to call him? I forgot his name. Clammy Dit Veto, something like that. Clammy Git Vetio, right? He's in the corner and he's stood next to Kragnos. Okay, perfect. So in the opponent's turn, you're going to be able to teleport Kragnos and then use the countercharge command ability to do a 3d6 charge. Pretty spicy. That's really nice. Also, obviously, you can interact loads with the ability to, like, we saw before with a Fight Another Day. There's loads of combinations here, which I think is really nice. And yeah, that is some solid Warhammer. And the last one is Spore Maws, which is cast on a 7. You pick a friendly Gloomspite Gitz wizard to cast your spell, and you pick up to 3 visible enemy units within 12. And then if you've cast a spell, you roll a d3, and on a 2-up, you'll do d3 mortal wounds. So it could be up to 3d3 mortal wounds into the enemy. 12 inches is fairly short range. But what's nice about this, obviously casting your opponent's turn, now we're doing 63 mortal wounds. That can really start to stack up, in my personal opinion. So I think that's quite nice. And I think that's good. It's obviously, no one has a big set of rules, but the teleport, in conjunction with countercharge, in conjunction with other units you can use in this game, feels really nice. -1 to hit to make your armies more survivable. Pretty good spell lore. So when you're writing your army list, one of the things you also get to do is you get to write down a manifestation lore. Because you're playing Gloomspite Gitz, you're super lucky to have your own personal manifestation lore, the Dank manifestations. These relate to the 4 endless spells or manifestations that you're able to use for your army. The manifestations are free. Choosing a manifestation lore is also free. They're competing, or this one is competing with being able to choose any of the generic manifestation lores. Go check out my video about that. And then also with the Incarnate, which is a big monster that you're also able to bring along for free for some reason. But effectively, you're, as well as having to buy a terrain feature, you now also kind of have to buy some manifestations. These are the Gitz-themed ones. They're all basically the same. You need a wizard to summon them because it's a spell that you're casting. You cast the spell and then you summon the manifestation. The casting values are on there. They're all like 6s for Mork's Mighty Mushroom and Scuttletide and 7s for Malevolent Moon. And then you set them all up wholly within 12 inches with Scuttletide, Malevolent Moon, and the Arachnacauldron all needing to be outside of 9 inches of the enemy. And apart from that, there's no changes. So, well, there's nothing different about them. So we'll go look at what the actual manifestations do. First one we're going to look at is Scuttletide. It's got 6 health, and it's got a 6-up save. So manifestations can be attacked and killed, and if you do end up attacking and killing someone, a wizard is going to be able to resummon them and put them on the board. Just worth noting. It's got a banishment value of 7, which means your opponent can try to get rid of it, which is quite nice. It does 8 attacks, 4s and 4s, but it does crit mortals, so any 6s to hit are going to do crit mortals. The manifestation can pass across terrain features as if it had fly. This unit has a 4-up ward save while it's wholly within 12 inches of any friendly Arachnaroks. So what you could use this for is to create a little barrier so your opponent is maybe not going to be able to complete a charge or get around a piece of terrain and use that 4-up ward save to tank enemy attacks. But 6 health with a 4-up ward save, I'm not sure if it's going to be that survivable. It also doesn't do that much damage, but it's free. So maybe you'll take it. Let me know. The next one you can take is Mork's Mighty Mushroom. It's got 6 health and 6-up saves, banished on a 7. It's got a 6-up ward. So it's not that survivable, but you can keep throwing it in. And in my opinion, this one's pretty good. It's in any shooting phase is the ability. That's when it pops off, the mutating spores ability. And because it's in any shooting phase, that means it can be done before your opponent can charge it, and then attack and kill it. Also, obviously, because you can use the command ability to cast it in your opponent's turn. We love that. That's pretty nice. So what does it do? You pick up to 3 enemy units within 6 inches of this manifestation to be the targets. For each target, roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in that unit that are within 6 inches of this manifestation. For each 5+, you inflict a mortal damage on it. So you're going to do mortal wound damage to big blocks of, infantry, lots of models. You can cast in your opponent's turn. You can set it up super close. You can get 6 inches quite broad, in my opinion. Think of units trying to grab objectives. I love that, and I think that's really strong, and this is out there as probably being one of the most effective, considering it's free, because this could absolutely pop a load of mortal damage into the opponent's army. This is pretty good. The next one is the Malevolent Moon. It's got 6 health. It's got a 6-up save, and it does move 12 inches, and that's really good because of the effect that it has. It does have some attacks, but we don't care about the attacks because it's 4 attacks, 1 attack that hits on a 4, wounds on a 3, and it's D3. The important part is it's got a passive Lurid Light, where friendly Gloomspite Gitz units that are under the light of the bad moon while they're wholly within 12 inches of the Malevolent Moon. This is really nice because you can kind of sit this behind your opponent's army behind your army, and make it so that all your Troggs are always +1 save, no matter the situation. It also means you can have one unit or a couple of units that are away from the main path of where the moon will be, and they're always going to benefit from the moon. So you can move out of your Loonshrine with the moon, then use this endless spell to also still be, or manifestation, sorry, to still be under the moon. I think this is really good. Probably see this cast quite a lot. The next one is Scrapskuttle's Arachnacauldron, 6 health, 5 up save, a little bit more survivable, move 6 inches, and has been pointed out in the chat, and it's a good point to remind people, if a manifestation are units now and can charge and engage if they have a movement value. So it is worth talking about, but don't forget you can attack them. Anyway, it's not really used to be in combat, so that's not important. The important part is it's got, in your hero phase, it's got the Blessing of the Cauldron, and what you could do is you pick a friendly Gloomspite Gitz wizard within an inch of the manifestation, and you can add one to the target's power level, which is how many spells you can cast and how many dispels you're going to be able to do until the start of your next turn. Obviously, this will work really well in conjunction with the ability to have +1 to cast, so you can cast more spells and have +1 to cast. That's quite nice. But ultimately, these are free. Probably going to bring them along because you've got the ability to have the moon additionally, but these are always arguing place against the Incarnate, I guess. The first War Scroll that we're going to look at is the titular leader of the Gloomspite Gitz, Skragrott the Loon King. He's got 6 health with a very, very weak 6-up save, so probably not that survivable, and moves 5 inches. But importantly, has got a 4-up ward save, you can see there, and is a level 2 wizard, or a power level 2 wizard. He's going to be able to cast 2 spells, which is nice. He's also a War Master, which means he'll be the general, which means you're going to be able to have 4 units in his regiment. Super simple. Okay. He's not good in combat. He's got 4 attacks that do D3 damage. So that's not what he's there for. He's kind of there to be a caster, and with only a 6-up save, you definitely don't want him to be too close to the front lines. That's important. The reason that you probably bring him, I'm going to say, is because of 2 things. His unique spell and this ability, the Loon King's Entreaty. Once per battle reaction, you declare the Bad Moon's orbit ability. So this is when the Bad Moon would move into the center of the board and would move on. And if you do decide to do it, and it's only once per battle, you can choose whether the Bad Moon moves to the next location or stays in its current location instead of rolling the dice. Really nice. So if you're like, cool, I'm going to have the moon in the center of the board for 2 battle rounds, that's the reason you would want to bring him, in my opinion. The other one is Fangs of the Bad Moon, which is cast on 7, which is his unique War Scroll spell. You pick an visible enemy unit within 18 inches and you roll 2d6. You roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified casting roll. For each 3+, you inflict a mortal damage. So if you roll really big, like a big 12 up, like big 12, then that unit is going to take a ton of mortal damage. And you know what? That might work really nicely if you do this in conjunction with the Universal Spell Lord to do additional mortal wound damage, or if you give him the Arachnarok Cauldron and then you start throwing out Mork's Mighty Mushroom as well. He could be just a little power base for just dishing out mortal wounds. And 18 inches is pretty long distance, to be honest. So you could do a lot there. He also has an ability which is pretty underwhelming, which is a reaction. You declare a redeploy command for a friendly Moonclan unit holding 12 inches of this unit. And then that unit, if it rolls a 1 to 3, can move a 4 instead. I mean, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by that. Maybe that's better than I think. I don't know, but personally, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by that myself. Though that's Skragrott. Let me know what you think of Skragrott. I want you to let me know what you think of every one of the War Scrolls that we cover, but that's Skragrott's. So if you don't want a little fella and instead you want a big fella, you can have Trugg the Troggoth King. 16 health with 4-up save is going to make this guy quite survivable. Don't forget, if it's affected by the Bad Moon or the light of the Bad Moon, it's going to have +1 to that save for a 16 health on a 3-up save. But the disappointing thing, he doesn't start off with a ward save, so mortal damage is going to punch through. Control value of 5, like lots of the monsters we've seen, is quite nice, and has got a pretty decent melee profile, with the big thing being that his Iron Shell Club, which has got 4 attacks, hits on 3s, which means any minuses to hit means you're only going up to a 4, which is honestly quite nice. Wounds on a 2, rend 2, damage 4, for potentially 16 damage just from the club alone, with 2 mighty antler attacks, which do hit on 4s, sad noises. Wounds on a 2, rend 2, and damage D3 +3. So if Trugg does spike, he can spike really big. Now, if he is battle damage and he's taken 10 or more wounds, then you're going to be able to only roll 3 dice on the Laystone ability, which we'll talk about in a second. But to add to his survivability, he has got, at the start of any turn, which does mean every turn, greater regeneration, where you heal D6 to this unit, which means at the start of every turn, heal D6. Heal D6. That's great. So he's going to be very, very survivable, we would really hope. And he's also, don't forget, got that Troggoth keyword. So if he does any fighting at the end of combat, he can also heal an additional D3. He's also got, in any combat phase, once per turn for the army, which means for every combat phase, got the Crushing Grip. Now, some of the other war scrolls we look at might also have Crushing Grip. So you're going to be able to choose one of your units with Crushing Grip to do in every combat phase. And what you do is you pick an enemy within 1 inch of this unit to be the target, and you roll dice, and if the roll equals to or exceeds the target's health characteristic, one model in the target unit is slain. So we love that. If you've got a 5-win model and you roll a 6, crush that guy to death, which is good. But maybe, you know, the main reason you bring Trugg is because he's a support piece for the rest of the Troggoth army that you're going to bring. So you definitely would take the battle formation, which benefits Truggs and make them heal better, because Trugg adds to that. Because in your hero phase, you can use the malfunctioning Laystone, or as it's known in my family, the Bonk Stonks, because he's got like something on his head that he hits. And you roll 3 dice, and you must pick one of those dice and apply the effect that corresponds to its value. Effects 2 to 6 persist until the start of your next turn. So that's really nice, because that's going to be ages if the opponent gets a priority roll. So this is really, really, really nice. How long it lasts is good. On a roll of a 1, which means you would roll a triple 1, you inflict D3 mortal damage on the unit. That's sad. We don't want that. The Glyph of Gur, which is a 2, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons by friendly Troggoth units wholly within 12. That's wicked, in my personal opinion. That's really good, especially with all of the abilities to move, like power through, redeploy, even counter charges, to make it so that you can bring that aura effect around the right units is really nice. But +1 attack is very good, especially with the high damage output that you get on Troggoth units. Glyph of Ashqui, add 1 to the Rend characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Troggoth units while they're wholly within 12, which is good. If you find a high armor unit and you want to add additional Rend, I don't know what works out better. I feel like +1 attack is always better. The worst one is probably Glyph of Heesh. This unit can unbind abilities if it's had Wizard 1. No, thank you. Glyph of Ooglu is subtract 1 from rolls for shooting attacks that target friendly Troggoth units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. That's quite nice, especially if you obviously combo this with other minuses to hit we've already talked about. And finally, if you're on 6, this unit has a 5-up ward save. And the 5-up ward save is quite nice, because then obviously 16 health, possibly a 3-up armor save thanks to the moon, healing D6 every time, and also a 5-up ward save means he could be a real like move blocker and just pin units in where you're just stuck against this immovable troll mountain. But it feels like the real power, or the real reason you would want to bring this guy in a list is because of being able to have +1 attack to all of the trolls around you. So I really like Trugg. I think the model's great, and I think you definitely are going to run him in a troll army. So the first kind of non-name character we're going to talk about is the Fungoid Cave-Shaman. It's got 5 health, 6-up save, not very survivable, control value 2, terrible in combat, doesn't have a ward save, but it is a level 1 wizard. And the important part about this guy is probably when we get to the points review video, is that it'll be cheap. And because you have access to all those manifestations, you probably want a cheap wizard to do the cheap manifestation casting, and this guy will probably be what that is. Importantly, he's also got an ability called Death Cap Mushroom, which is once per battle you do in your hero phase, you add 1 to this unit's power level for the rest of the turn, meaning you can cast another spell. So this does mean you can cast Mork's Mighty Mushroom and also teleport Kragnos across the board. That's pretty legit. I love that. The next unit we're going to review is a unit of 5, and they're called the Gobbapalooza. Each model in the unit has got 3 health with a 6-up save, and they have got increased survivability at the beginning of the game because they have a 4-up ward save thanks to the passive hallucinogenic fungus brew. And then in every battle round after, it gets worse. 5-up, and then a 6-up as they end up getting either, I think it's more stoned or less stoned. I don't know. It actually says here, less stoned. So that's a pretty good, it's 5 models in the unit, so that's 15 wounds with a 4-up ward save, so they could be a screen, because they're definitely not going to be a combat unit with 1 attack each, that hits on a 4, wounds on a 4, and is D3 damage. The reason you're probably going to take them is because they're a support unit. They have the Gobbapalooza Know What's roll, and they're also a level 1 wizard. So like the level 1 wizard that we just looked at, but in addition to that, they also have the Know What's roll. So I really expect this to be quite a cheap unit because it's important to kind of benefit the units around them. What happens is, in your hero phase, you roll a dice on a 3-up, you pick one of the following effects. You can do the Glare Face Dance, where you pick a friendly Gloomspite Gitz unit within this unit's combat range and add one to run rolls and charge rolls to that unit until the start of your next turn, which is really nice. Pick a friendly Gloomspite Gitz unit within this unit's combat range and add one to that rend characteristic of that unit's weapons until the start of your next turn. So +1 rend could be very good because it's Gloomspite Gitz unit. So Troggoths, could end up with some crazy rend, especially if you combo this with Trugg, where you have +1 rend from Trugg, +1 rend from these guys. That could be some pretty amazing rend, in my personal opinion. And then you've got Mesmerize, where you pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches of this unit to the start next turn. That unit cannot use commands. So if there is an enemy unit that has some particularly egregious command abilities, being able to shut that off, we love that. So I like that a lot. Gobbapalooza can definitely feel disappointing compared to what it used to do. But if you're new to Age of Sigmar and you're just getting into this, depending on the points, considering this is already a level 1 wizard and also can benefit your armies massively, probably will see the Gobbapalooza. So next unit we'll look at is the Loonboss on Giant Cave Squig, and he's effectively a small missile melee unit which benefits specifically Boingrot Bounderz and Hoppers around him. So 6 health with a 5-up save, so is not going to survive combat for long, but does have the fly keyword, which is kind of nice. He's obviously also a hero because we're doing heroes. But big news, control value 5, which is pretty spicy because if this guy ends up being pretty cheap, maybe little multiples of these to go and grab objectives is honestly kind of fun. And he moves D6 plus 6 inches. Don't forget, under the moon, you can re-roll that. And then it's pretty great in combat. 5 attacks that get +1 damage on the charge, only rend 1, and it is 4s and 4s. But 5 attacks, damage 3, I think is pretty cool. And then 4 attacks from the Squig, which is 4s and 3s, rend 2, damage D3. So if this guy popped off, this guy is popping off big style, in my opinion, on the charge. And I think this could feel like a cavalry edition. Now, he does also have an ability called Let's Get Bouncing, which is a lot of words. And it's a reaction that you do to declaring a fight ability for this unit. So you declare a fight ability for this unit, and then you pick a friendly non-hero Squig cavalry unit, which is effectively Boingrot Bounderz or Hoppers, and then that has not used a fight ability, then that unit can immediately fight after this unit and gets +1 to hit. So it's immediately fight and +1 to hit. Now that's pretty nice in my personal opinion. And I really like that. Yeah, Manglers may also count as well. It's a non-hero Squig cavalry unit. Okay, that's what it is. So could also affect Manglers. When we get to Manglers, we'll review that. But considering this guy is a pretty fighty little fella as well, it's pretty nice. Like, genuinely, if this guy was like cheap, like 80 points, like I could see myself taking a couple of these, you know, just to be like, this guy could absolutely smash you, which is quite good. So the next unit is the Loonboss on Mangler Squigs. So this is like a monstrous melee unit with 14 health and a 5-up save and no ward save. So what I normally talk about when I talk about melee units is I talk about bruiser units. This, we guess, is more of like a glass cannon unit in that, because of its low save, the 5-up save, it's not going to be that survivable in combat. So once you charge it in, if it gets hit back, it's going to be in a tough spot. So the secret is, whatever you hit, make sure it dies. If this guy dies, bad news. Okay, so it's also kind of fast. It moves 8 inches plus a D6 under the moon. You're going to be able to re-roll that. So up to potentially 14 inches. It does have the fly keyword, which is kind of good, I think. In combat, 5 attacks from the Moon Cutter that does damage 2, and then 4 attacks from the huge Fang-filled Gobs that do damage D6, which, if this unit has taken 10 or more damage, which is probably going to do, then it gets 6 attacks on its huge Fang-filled Gobs. So 6 attacks that does D6 damage is really great, but it does hit on a 4, and it's only got the pretty weak source rend 1. So as a melee unit, I don't really feel it's going to be punching through as much as I would like. So I'm hoping it's going to end up on the cheaper side. And then it's got 4 additional attacks, which do damage D3. But in my opinion, the minuses to hit that we've already seen in this book alone, as well as the other books, it's going to be hitting quite badly. But when it does get through, it's going to do some damage. Anyway, so it does have an ability if it dies, which is good because it's probably going to, called Watch Out. And if this unit is destroyed before removing it from play, you roll dice for each enemy unit within this unit's combat range. And on 4+, inflict D3 mortal damage. They didn't even have the good grace to say just if it dies. You have to still roll a dice. I actually am quite gutted why the 5+ armor save. Combat units really need a good armor save to stick around for a couple of turns, otherwise they just get hit back. Okay. It also has an ability. Now, probably the reason you would take it is for the 2 other abilities that it has. One, Bite the Moon, is a once per battle ability across your whole army, which is done in any combat phase. And you pick this unit and all friendly Squig units holier than 12 inches, this unit to be the targets. You add 1 to the wound rolls of their gob attacks. Obviously, if you take this in the battle formation where you get +1 attack on the gob attacks, so now you're getting +1 to wound, you're getting an additional attack. You could spike a big punchy amount of damage, which I think is quite interesting. And then in addition to that, you've got the Kasplat, which is done once per turn in the army for any charge phase, which means this also works if you do a counter charge in your opponent's turn. And if this unit charge, you pick an enemy unit within an inch, you roll a number of dice equal to the models in the enemy unit up to a maximum of 10 for some reason. And then any 4+s will inflict a mortal damage. So potentially 5 mortal damage coming out of this unit, which if you obviously combo this with the ability to 3+ with the artifact that we looked at earlier, move out, which the artifact we talked about. And then that means that you're going to be able to then maybe pile in again. But I would say the one thing I'm a little bit disappointed about is the fact that he's got a 5+ armor save. So I'm really hoping this comes in super cheap, like 200 points-ish, because this guy's going to get slammed by basically anything that looks at it, which is a bit disappointing. I should note the positive, though, a great force multiplier if you're running a load of Squigs. Okay, next unit we're going to look at is the Loonboss on foot, 5 health, with a 4+ armor save, which is better than a Mangler Squig, and a 6+ ward save, which is also better than a Mangler Squig. It's got 5 attacks in combat that does damage D3, which is genuinely quite respectable, but it is 4s and 4s. And it's got a couple of abilities. The first one is Let's Get Stabbing, which effectively lets this unit fight at the same time as a unit of non-hero Moonclan infantry, which basically means stabbers. Is what it means. And then this unit fights, and then that other unit can immediately fight. But unlike the ability we saw earlier, you don't get +1 to hit. However, the real reason you're taking this unit is because of its support role that it's going to be able to bring for stabbers. In your hero phase, you can use the I'm the Boss ability, where you pick a friendly, visible Moonclan Stabbas unit wholly within 12 inches. Yeah, that's super important. Or you could use, and then roll a dice. On a 2+, pick one of the following effects. If the target is not in combat, you can turn D6 slain models, which obviously is going to work really well with the clammy hand that we saw earlier, and also having a banner in a unit to return loads of models with this plus rally. Or you can add +1 to wound rolls for the target's attacks until the start of the next turn, which if you have a big group of stabbers, give them all +1 to wound. That feels really nice. In my opinion, really nice. And then obviously making this guy fight simultaneously with another unit is also quite nice. So there you go. Although, do you really want a 5 wound hero on a 4+ save in combat? I don't know. But pretty cool little dude. Okay, the next unit we're going to look at is the Rabble-Rowza. 5 health with a 5+ save, doesn't have a ward save, isn't very survivable. And it's got, and for some reason, Bat Squigs, that's a 12-inch ranged weapon that does 3 attacks, 4s and 4s, and does D3 damage, which is wild. He's got 5 attacks in combat himself that does D3, which is quite nice. Now, the secret tech here is that this unit can be put into reserve in a secret tunnel. So effectively, when you're doing all your deployments, you can put unit to the side. And in your movement phase, you can emerge from the tunnel, anywhere on the board 9 inches from enemy units. Okay, so that's important to remember. So just imagine your enemy's army, and then you start your turn, and then I just put this guy right in the back corner near their army, but 9 inches away. That's what you need to remember for when I read the next ability. Because he has an ability that you do once per turn for your army in your movement phase called Nina Nina Can't Catch Me. You pick a visible, friendly monster or beast to be the target. For the rest of that turn, the target can use charge abilities even if it uses run. So it's got run and charge, basically. But each time it uses a move ability, it must end that move closer to this unit. So it just runs as fast as it can towards that. And then, in addition, for the rest of the turn, the first time this target ends its move within this unit's combat range, so basically if you get within 3 inches of the Rabble-Rowza, the monster does, then you take D6 mortal damage and probably die. Now, the fun combo, and shout out to my friend Dom who's in the chat here, is picture this. You're a regular steel helm on the front line holding a shield, and you see the God of Destruction Kragnos. And you're like, okay, he might not get here too fast, but actually what he ends up doing, he ends up running and charging, and then slamming with his 3d6 charge ability into your front lines. Then he uses a command ability to do a power through and ends up behind you, right next to the Rabble-Rowza, and you're like, oh my God. But we've made the Rabble-Rowza a wizard with our artifact that we looked at earlier. And then what we do in my Steel Helm turn, I'm like, oh, 66 my turn, my turn. We then teleport Kragnos back out in front of the front line again. And then he uses the countercharge ability to slam into the lines again. And then you repeat this process in what seems like a cacophony of destruction that makes me want to cry. It's a wonderful ability. Rabble-Rowza, 10 out of 10. Next unit we're going to look at is the Squigboss with Gnasha-Squig, 4 health, with a 6-up save and no ward save, means this guy's going to die to a stiff breeze anywhere. So hopefully very, very cheap. He's fine in combat, but that's not what he's really there for. He's there as a support piece, and he has the feeding time ability, which is done once per turn in your hero phase. You pick a friendly Squig unit within this unit's combat range, so within 3 inches, and then roll a dice on a 2+, pick one of the effects to apply for the rest of the turn. First one is add 3 inches that target's move characteristic, which is obviously very useful if you're trying to get a unit into combat. But the one that I think is more useful is Yellow Lurker, where you turn any of the gob attacks into having crit mortals, where any 6s to hit, so this is down here, any 6s to hit are going to cause mortal wounds. And in my opinion, that's a really big deal, because you can have a lot of attacks if you're taking squigs, and if you're taking like some of the larger squigs, then you can do a lot of mortals if you spike really well on the 6s. So I think this is really good, and feels like it's going to be an auto-include if you're running loads of squigs, basically. The next unit is the Webspinner Shaman. I need to remind you of what the Webspinner Shaman is. He's a little tiny fellow you get as part of the Arachnarok kit with a silly stick and a cloak made of spider webs. Okay. He's moved 6 inches, has only got 4 health, so it's very killable, and has got a 6-up save and a 6-up ward save, so not survivable, and is a wizard 1, so he's going to be able to cast some spells. Okay, as well as obviously being a hero. Okay, now, the key thing to say here is, because he's a wizard, you're going to be able to do some really fun stuff with him. He's got 3 attacks, but he's not built to be a combat character. Instead, in the hero phase, you can use Web Slingshot. This is brilliant. Pick a friendly Spiderfang unit or a terrain feature within 18 inches of this unit to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 2-up, remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again wholly within 3 inches of the target and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. He's literally Spider-Man. Okay? Absolutely. And yeah, I'm going to read out the flavor text. The Webspinner Shaman conjures a sheet of webbing that they use to launch themselves across the battlefield. Okay? Absolute peak narrative. Okay, so now this is in conjunction with the fact that he has a control value of 5, which I think is a copy and paste error, considering you can get Webspinner Shaman on Arachnarok. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to use this early in the edition to go grab objectives by web spinning all over the place, like, you know, crazy Peter Parker, which we love. So we love that. That's super funny. In addition, though, he's also a wizard, and you do this in your hero phase, so you can teleport near a piece of terrain using the slingshot and then cast the spell. Get ready. Okay, he's also got his own unique spell called Speed of Spider God, where you pick a friendly visible Spiderfang unit, wholly within 12 inches. The target can use run ability this turn, or still use a shoot and or charge ability later in this turn. So you got run and shoot, so for Spiderfang units, which is honestly legit very good. And so obviously is also a force multiplier for Spiderfang units. So we love the Webspinner Shaman. Peak lore, peak gameplay. Whip around with these guys being control value 5. I hope they're like 80 points so you can do some crazy business with them. 11 out of 10. But if you want your Webspinner Shaman to be on a giant spider, then you can take the Webspinner Shaman on a Arachnarok Spider that's got 16 health with a 4-up save and moves the very unironic 10 inches, seeing as it's got 8 legs. And it's also control value 5, as if there was a copy and paste error, which will probably not get fixed. So, What does this thing do? Well, it's got an incredible amount of attacks, but importantly, it's kind of a combat melee piece. And don't forget, we can take a spell where everything holier than 12 inches is -1 to hit, Sneaky Distraction. I think this makes a lot of sense on the Webspinner Shaman on Arachnarok, because it's got a massive base, like huge. It's like 160 mil. Anyway, what does it do in combat? Well, importantly, it's got its monstrous spider fangs, which do 4 attacks. The hit on 3s, wound on 2s are rend 1, unfortunately, and damage D3. Sorry, damage 3, not damage D3. But have crit mortals. So any 6s to hit are going to do 3 mortals. And don't forget, under the light of the moon, as crit mortals are going to happen on 5s. So it could spike a lot of mortal damage. Like a lot, which would be pretty interesting. Spider God Staff has D3 damage, which has got 3 attacks. There are 8 Crooked Spear attacks, which are rubbish, and the Chitinous Legs somehow got worse, which are 8 attacks, hitting on 4s, wound on a 2, rend 1, damage 1. It's also got some Spider Bows as well, which are 10 attacks, 4s and 5s, rend 1, damage 1, which feels like that's just going to make you more tired rolling those than you need to. If he gets damage, you get slightly less Chitinous Leg attacks, which is interesting. And then he's also got a passive called Warcrawler, where this unit can pass across terrain features as if it has the fly keyword. So that's quite good, especially because it's got a massive base. The big reason to take this, as well as obviously being a level 1 wizard, is because of the Catch Web Spider Shrine, where you add 1 to casting rolls for friendly Spiderfang wizards where they're wholly within 12 inches, which, as we know, you can be near places of power and also take an artifact out of this list, as well as use the Cauldron, which means you could have a little Webspinner Shaman on foot that is a 2-cast wizard that is casting at +3 to cast, which feels really nice in my personal opinion, but is very weird, okay? And then finally, you've got the Ensnaring Web Monstrous Rampage, which is done in any combat phase, but once per turn for the army, so multiple units can't do this. And it's done in every combat phase, obviously. And you pick an enemy infantry hero within 1 inch, roll dice on a 3-up, the target has strike last. So that's not the reason to take this. The reason to take this is you can make a very survivable, 16 health, very survivable wizard. But it's only a 1-cast wizard, but still a very survivable one that can add +1 to cast for friendly Spiderfang wizards while they're holding within 12 inches of this unit, which also includes itself, which makes it +1 to cast. So, if you could use the Arachnacauldron near this, make this a 2-cast wizard, it feels like that's pretty good and is able to defend itself. So I quite like that. I think the Webspinner Shaman or Arachnarok Spider's got a lot of potential uses. Depends how you build the rest of the list. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Dankhold Troggboss, and you guys are about to get very excited. Trugg fans are about to get wild. Dankhold Troggboss has got 12 health with a 4-up save, but does not have a ward save, which is fine. It's fine. Only moves 6 inches, so is slow. And is a monster with a control value of 5. Why am I really excited about this? Well, he's got 5 attacks. They hit on 4s, which is obviously really sad. But wounds on the 2 and his rend 2 and his damage D6. So that's 5 attacks for a potential 30 damage. But that's where it gets much better. He also has, at the start of any turn, the ability to do greater regeneration, which is heal D6. So he's going to heal D6 at the start of every turn. So he's going to really add to that survivability. And it's also got the ability to ignore any spells or the target of any spells, or if it's chosen as a target of a spell on a 4+, you can ignore that spell effect. But the big news is that once per turn for the army in any combat phase, which means every combat phase, then you can do the Monstrous Rampage Shepherd of Destruction, where if this unit is in combat, you roll a dice on a 3-up. For the rest of that turn, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Troggoth units while within this unit's combat range. That's also going to affect itself. It would also affect Trugg if Trugg was nearby, and Trugg has got the ability to add +1 attack to Troggoth units wholly within 12 inches. It would also affect another Dankhold Troggboss that was nearby. So you could have 2 Dankhold Trogbosses with 7 attacks doing D6 damage, and Trugg with 6 attacks doing damage 4, and 4 attacks doing damage D3 +3. Which is wild. It's a wild situation for everyone to be in my personal opinion. Trugg fans looking very excited. The first unit that we're going to look at for the Gloomspite Gitz are the Rockgut Troggoths. This is a unit of 3, so you can obviously reinforce them to be a unit of 6. Each Rockgut Troggoth has got 5 health, so a unit of 3 is going to have 15 health with a 4-up save. Under the Light of the Bad Moon, that's going to be a 3-up save. And, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls at home, they have a 5-up ward save. So these guys are these are like rocks. These are like trying to get rid of rocks. Now it gets even more fun. They're only control value 2, so a unit of 3 is only going to be 6, a unit of 6 is going to be 12, which is kind of okay. And they are on the slower side, they only move 6 inches. But, and to help with their help with their survivability, they do have regeneration, which is the start of any turn, which is heal D3, and if you take them in their battle formation at the end of combat, they'll also heal D3 as well. Okay. But they have a shooting attack, so each one of them can shoot 10 inches, which is 1 attack that hits on a 5, wounds on a 2, is Rend 2, and is damage D3. So don't see this as the reason to take them, to see this as a little bonus. The reason you want to take them is because of their Stone Maul or Craggy Hands, where you get to do 2 attacks that hit on 4s, which is bad, wounds on a 2, and is Rend 2, which is both great, and is damage 3. Now, 2 attacks, you might say to yourself, Rob, I'm going to have a unit of 3. They're only going to do 6 attacks. But we've just discussed all the combos that we can already do. If we have Trugg and a Trogboss, we can have +2 attacks to this unit. So that would mean a unit of 6. Each one is going to be doing 4 attacks, which is going to be 24, if I can do my math right, 24 attacks that are damage 3, which feels pretty crazy in my personal opinion, at a really high rend. If we wanted to add more to this, we could even add to their rend characteristic thanks to the Gobbapalooza. So they could be rend 3. You can do some really fun stuff with this unit, and they're very survivable with that the Light of the Moon on them, or use the Endless Spell, the Manifestation to move behind them to give them +1 save, 5-up ward save. I think people are going to be really scared of this unit. Keeping on the Trugg train, we're going to look at Fellwater Troggoths. This is another unit of Troggoths, that come in a unit of 3. Could obviously be reinforced for unit 6. They're kind of like a melee support shooting unit. They're really interesting. 5 health each, but these are much less survivable than their rocky cousins, with only a 5-up armor save and no ward save. But obviously you get +1 save from the Light of the Moon. Control value 2, and they move 6 inches, so they're very similar. At the start of each turn, they're going to heal D3 with regeneration, and obviously in their battle formation, they're going to heal D3 at the end of combat as well, as long as they've used a fight ability. In combat, they've got 4 attacks that do 4 attacks per model, so 12 attacks across the unit, that hit on 4s, which is sad, wounds on a 3, rend 1, which is a bit sad as well, and is damage 2. But as we talked about previously, you can get +2 attacks potentially on this unit, or add additional rend. But this is where it gets really spicy. They have a shooting attack called Noxious Vomit, so they can vom on people, which is only a 6-inch range, but it's D3 attacks that you can shoot into combat. They hit on a 2, they wound on a 3, they're rend 2, and they're damage 1. But the damage that you do isn't really important. The reason that this is a support piece is because the Noxious Vomit is a passive, where if any damage points are allocated to an enemy unit by attacks made with this unit's Noxious Vomit, that unit is drenched in vomit, soaked, sopping in vomit until the start of your next turn. And while a unit is drenched in vomit, you subtract 1 from save rolls for that unit. And then you ignore positive modifiers to save rolls for that unit as well. So if you were trying to hit a unit with a unit of Dankholds and you vommed on them beforehand, that means your Dankhold Troggoths are now going to be rend 3. If you use Gobbapalooza, it's going to be rend 4. And you are just going to wipe units out. So these guys are a little bit more fragile, although 15 health is still quite a lot of health on a unit, which I think is interesting. And you can obviously use this unit to shoot in your opponent's turn into combat as well, which is really nice. So it turns out being sick is super strong. To round us out on the Trugg train is the Dankhold Troggoth, which is a single model with 10 health, control value of 5, and a 4-up armor save. And it's got 4 attacks in combat with Colossal Boulder Club. That's 4s, hits on a 4, wounds on a 2, rend 2, damage D3 +3. And obviously we already know that you can get +2 attacks on that. We already know that we can reduce their armor saves, add rend, so you can really slam a bunch of damage in. Also, at the start of every turn, it has regeneration, so it can heal D3, and very much like the other Rockguts, it's got magical resistance, so if this unit was picked to be the target of that spell, roll a dice on a 4-up, you ignore the effect of the spell on this unit. And then it's got its own special, cute little monstrous rampage called Wade and Smash.
where once per turn for the army in any combat phase, if this unit is in combat, it can move 6 inches, but must end that move in combat. Then roll d3 for each enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit, or 2+ inflict an amount of mortal damage on the unit equal to the roll. So you're going to be able to move, charge, move an additional 6 inches. You could also use the power through generic command ability to additionally move again. So these guys could be all over the place and be hitting things you weren't expecting, which we love, which is really, really nice. But I think maybe it depends on the points. This guy is going to be fighting against a reinforced unit of Rockguts, because with that 4-up save, which obviously goes to a 3-up save under the light of the moon, doesn't have a ward save, feels like that's going to be a problem. But, you know, heal in its sub-faction, heal another D3. I feel like it will be fighting for its place, but we'll have to see. So the first unit we're going to look at that's not a Trugg is going to be the Boingrot Bounderz. These are a unit of 5, and they are cavalry. It's an important thing to know, cavalry keyword. They've got a champion for +1 attack, and also got the fly keyword as well. Unit of 5, like I said, with only 2 health each with a 5-up save, so fairly fragile. And they're kind of quick. They move 6 inches plus an additional d6, which you can obviously re-roll if you're under the moon. But in my opinion, there's a lot of attacks here. With the Poking Lance, has got 3 attacks per model, so it's going to be 15 across the unit. 15 across the unit because it's a unit of 5 with +1 from the champion for 16, or 31 from a unit of 10. Now, the bad news is they hit on 4s and they wound on 4s with rend 1 damage 1, but the great news is they get +1 damage on the charge. So that's 16 attacks damage 2. Which is pretty good. In addition, they got the Fangfilled Gob, which is 3 attacks, 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. And as we know, we can get mortals from the Squigboss with Gnasha-Squig on this unit as well as a bunch of other ways to get plus attacks, plus to hit, plus to wound, plus to rend in this army. Means a unit of Boingrot Bounderz, I think, can smash through a bunch of stuff, in my opinion. In addition, if you want to take multiple small units of Boingrot Bounderz, and also if you charge them in at the same time as the Loonboss on Giant Cave Squig, these guys are going to be able to get strike at the same time and then also get +1 to hit. But you can also, in any charge phase, which means every charge phase, you can use Boing Smash, which basically if you charge into a unit, on a 2+, you can do that many mortal wounds. So D3 mortal wounds, not D6. So these feel pretty nice. They're not great at holding an objective. That's not their job. But it feels like if you combo these with some of the other units, they are going to just give your opponent a billion dice, and you are going to just smash through some stuff. Through all of this, we should also be remembering that when any of these units die, you're going to be able to bring back half the unit size. So 6 Rockguts die, you're going to be able to bring 3 back. If you get 10 Boingrot Bounderz die, then you're going to be able to bring 5 back, as long as the Loonshrine is alive, which is pretty good. Next unit we're going to look at are Squig Hoppers. Squig Hoppers is a unit of 10, and they're kind of like a light cavalry that does mortal wounds when you move over units. There's 2 health per Squig Hopper, so just a unit of 10 is going to be 20 wounds, which is pretty impressive. And you can reinforce them up to a unit of 20 for 40 wounds, which is a bucket load of wounds. But their survivability is pretty low because they have a 6-up save. But Gits are all benefiting from the fact, if you're Age Sigmar 3 fans, that Battle Shock is no longer a thing. So your opponent is going to have to do all 40 damage to get rid of these guys, which is not as easy as you think. Then they have a move value of 8 inches plus d6, which you can reroll onto the moon. And in combat, you can ignore the goblin on top. But the Fangfilled Gob is 3 attacks, which you can make have mortals, which we talked about already with the Squigboss with Gnasha-Squig. And they have this ability, which is the reason that you want them. In any movement phase, you can use Boing, 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 where you pick an enemy unit that this unit passed across this phase to be the target. Roll a dice for each model in this unit, as in the Squig Hopper unit, and then roll a dice. For each 4+, inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. So if I have a unit of 20 and I'm able to make them move over a unit, then I'm going to do 10 mortal damage on average with this unit. And then I can charge and then do loads of attacks. 60 attacks to the Fangfilled Gobs with mortals on crit 6s, which feels pretty nice. I think I need to really remember that the 6-up save is rubbish, and so many units are just going to wipe out units of Squig Hoppers. But there's no Battle Shock, so you have to wipe out all of them. And that's a lot of health, and it's going to be a lot of more wounds when you move over stuff. I quite like that. And just in case I didn't remind you, you can bring a unit back from the shrine, then move over more guys. You can have a great time. Next up, we're going to look at the Squig Herd. You get 10 Squigs and you get 2 Herders in a unit, which means you can reinforce it to have 20 Squigs and 4 Herders. Oddly, these Squigs don't have 2 health each. They've only got 1 health each, which is really, really weird. I don't know if they're young Squigs, what the situation is. Either way, they also are beasts, and therefore this unit can have a maximum control score of 1. So that means it's only going to have a control score of 1, no matter how many, even if you've got all 20 Squigs and all 4 of the Herders on an objective. So that's bad, because you probably want to hold objectives. In addition, they've only got a 6-up save, and they've only got that 1 health, so they're going to die pretty quickly. Okay. Now, you can have 1 model out of every 6 be a clanger, a herder, and the herder in your hero phase, you can roll a dice for each Squig herder. On a 2-up, you can return D3 slain cave Squigs. For each one, a Squig herder in this unit is slain. Then, of course, you could use a rally command and then also get back a Squig herder if you wanted to go that way, which is kind of fun. And then, if the whole unit dies, you can bring it back from a Loonshrine. They've got an ability called passive called Squigs Gone Wild, where each time a model in this unit is slain in a combat attack, the model that is in combat with it, roll a dice. On a 5-up, you inflict a mortal damage. So I think the concept with this unit is you reinforce this unit really big. You get it in combat, your opponent kills most of them, fingers crossed, toes crossed, butthole crossed, and then you do a bunch of mortal wounds back. Then use your herders and bring more back. Maybe get yourself out of combat, do a rally, and then you send them in again. And then they still have 3 attacks each. So, a unit of 20 is going to have 60 attacks, and you can still make them do mortals. But I think that control value 1 is rough. Being slower than the other units, D6 plus 3 inches, is also going to be a problem. I don't really rate this War Scroll at the moment, but hopefully they're super cheap. Also, they're beasts. I should mention that. They're also beasts, so therefore Rabble-Rowza will affect them, so they can also gain run and charge. And if you have Rabble-Rowza and Kragnos, you can have run and charge and 3d6 charge with this unit. So this unit could be going insane numbers across the board and charging in. The next unit we're going to talk about are Mangler Squigs. So Mangler Squigs, 14 health, 5-up save. It's a monster that moves pretty fast, 8 inches with a D6 on top. Obviously, re-roll that. Control value of 5 is good. If it gets wounded with its Squig Rage, it has slightly more huge fang-filled gob attacks, which we'll talk about in a minute. And also, if this unit dies, it has the passive ability Watch Out, where enemy units within combat range on a 4+ take D3 mortal damage. But the reason you're going to take this guy, we'll talk about his melee profile in a minute, is because of the giant boing that you can do. Once per turn, in any charge phase, you can do a giant boing, which does mean every charge phase. And if this unit charged this turn, you can roll a dice, and on a 3+, this unit can move 3d6 inches, but must end that move in combat. That does mean that if you combo this with Kragnos, this thing can charge 3d6 inches after moving, and also then on a 3+ move an additional 3d6 inches. The problem is, when it gets there, I'm not sure if it's going to kill loads. It does have 4 attacks that hit on 4s, wound on 2s, but a rend 1, and they do d6 damage. So that's pretty average. And the balls and chains are only 4 attacks that do damage D3, but they're 4s and 4s with no rend. So they'll probably do nothing. So while I love the concept of this thing boinging around the board, it doesn't necessarily spark joy in the profile for combat. So boing, I guess? Okay, so the next unit we're going to talk about is quite a unique and weird unit because it's a Git mob unit, which is a keyword that doesn't even exist or interact with anything else in this book. Super weird unit. This is Snarlfang Riders. They are a unit of 5 cavalry, and they have the whole loadout. They have a musician, they have a standard bearer, they have a champion. They probably should be an old world. They've also got a control value of 1. Each model has got 2 health, so a unit of 5 is going to have 10 health on a 5-up save, which isn't that survivable, but they're incredibly quick. They move 12 inches, okay? And we'll talk about their melee profile in a second, but we'll talk about the fact that they have a once per turn across the army ability, which you do in the enemy movement phase, right? And then if this unit is not in combat, this unit can move D6 inches and it cannot end that move in combat. But I think at the moment, I think you can combo this with redeploy, which means you could potentially move this unit up to 12 inches. And the cavalry bases are quite good for producing screens. And because you'll do this in the enemy movement phase after your opponent has done their movements, you could move block a charging unit from charging into something that they want to do. Are you going to do that? Probably not. But what you could also do is move this unit really fast up the board. It moves 12 inches. You could obviously run. That would make it up to 18 inches. In your opponent's movement phase, this unit can move an additional D6, which I think is fun as well. And also, because that movement won't be a redeploy, which redeploy has the run keyword, that means you're going to be able to do this movement and also do countercharge, which means you could potentially snipe out some characters at the back of the board, which I think is fun as well. When they do finally get into combat, the wolves themselves have got 2 attacks each. That's 10 across the unit. Hits on 4s, which is bad. No rend, wounds on a 3, but it's damage 2. So you could legit lift a hero, which I think is interesting. They've also got some shots, but the Grot Bros are pretty bad. So there you go. Next unit we're going to talk about are a support unit, and these are the Sneaky Snufflers. Now, this is unit 6 with 2 health each, with a 6-up save and a 5-up ward save built in. These are a support piece that you're probably going to bring along, especially if you're running a lot of Gitz or if you're running Boingrots. So all of those units that we talked about earlier, as well as some of the units we're about to talk about, are going to be able to benefit from a unit of Sneaky Snufflers. Because once per turn in your army, so only one unit can do it, in your hero phase you can use Loon-Cap Mushrooms, where you pick a friendly visible Moonclan unit wholly within 12 inches, so the Moonclan keyword to be the target. You roll a dice and you add 1 to the roll if this unit is under the light of the bad moon. On a 3+, the target has a 5-up ward save. And until the start of your next turn, on a 6+, also add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that unit's melee weapon. So that means on a 5-up if you're under the light of the moon, or a 2-up if you're under the light of the moon. So 5-up ward +1 to your attacks characteristic. So imagine our big unit of Boingrot Bounderz that we had earlier now getting an additional attack from these guys, as well as a 5-up ward save to help with their survivability, which I think is really interesting. One of our bigger units of Moonclan Grots, all with a 5-up ward save, going to make them much more survivable. So it feels like Sneaky Snufflers are going to be an auto-include if you're taking a lot of either of the Squig units, or like with the goblins, obviously, or you're taking the grots. These feel really good, in my opinion. Really, really good. Hopefully these end up cheap, but you're definitely going to see this in probably most non-Trogg base lists. The next unit, Sporesplatta Fanatics, are wicked. It's a unit of 5 little nightmares swinging around a big, crazy Sporesplatta. They've only got 1 health each. They've only got a 6-up save. And they don't have a ward save, but they do have the Moonclan keyword, so you could give them a 5 ward save if you fancied. They've got D3 attacks each that hit on 3s, wound on 4s, have rend 1, and do D3 damage, which is pretty spicy. Okay, now, in the deployment phase, this unit can use a normal move as if it were your movement phase, which we call a pre-game move. This is going to be really good if you're trying to screen against some like first turn Alpha Strike armies, if you're trying to stop an enemy unit from grabbing some objectives in the middle of the board, a bunch of different stuff. This is really interesting. This unit moves 2d6 inches though. That's the problem. So you can't guarantee how far it's going to go, which is an issue in my opinion. Okay. Now, the reason this is that's really good in my opinion. Screening is really good. But the reason it's really, 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 really good is because of the Puff Shroom Frenzy, where you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly other Moonclan units while they're wholly within 12 inches this unit, and subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by enemy units while they're within combat with this unit. So now we're getting +1 attack to our Moonclan units. We can give them 5-up ward saves. We can already give them another +1 attack. So Boingrot Bounderz can have like 5 attacks each. If you take him in the sub-faction where the Squigs also get +1 attack, I think a Boingrot Bounderz, an absolute stonk Boingrot Bounderz, this is how excited I am, I think is having 5 attacks potentially on the Rider and 4 attacks on the Squig. The Squigs can also be doing mortals. It's an incredible amount of damage, right? Incredible amount of damage from these guys. Wild stuff. Okay, I thought the last guys were good. These guys are even better. Loonsmasha Fanatics, unit of 5. You can reinforce it to a unit of 10. Definitely do this. This is going to be so good. They move 2d6 inches. That's sad. Want. We hate that. Okay, they got 1 health each, and they've only got 6-up saves. So they're going to die super fast. Okay, and they're only control value of 1, which is fine, you know, because they are what they are. The reason these are great is because they do D6 attacks each, that's 5d6 or 10d6, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 2, damage d3. And we already know there's at least 2 other ways to get +1 to hit on +1 attack on these guys. So we could potentially have these guys with d6 +2, so that would be 20 attacks from a unit of 10 plus 10 d6 attacks. They hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 2, but we could vomit on someone, rend 3. We could, that would be really nice. We could use a Gobbapalooza for rend 4, damage d3, and just keep swinging. And then if you really wanted to, you take Kragnos and you just 3d6 charge. Wait. And then you've got Hidden Loons, where this unit can, instead of being set up on the board, it can be deployed into a unit. It's set up as hidden among the mobs. And the way you release these guys out of the mobs is in any movement phase, you can release the Fanatics. You pick this unit if it is hidden among the mobs, then pick a friendly Moonclan Shooters or Moonclan Stabbas unit that has 10 or more models to be the target. And then set up this unit anywhere on the battlefield, wholly within 6 inches of the target and more than 9 inches from all enemy models. So if you wanted to, you could just deploy these guys on the board, which would be very funny, or you can sneak attack these guys, or you can sit at the back of the board and teleport these guys and do a charge. Loads of fun stuff. And as if that wasn't enough, this unit has the strike first effect, which if you end up doing a counter charge with a certain God of Destruction or any of those units, but whenever you do a counter charge, that means this unit has strike first. So countercharge strike first is wild. These guys are going to wreck stuff. These are the glass cannons that you want. So fun. You can set these guys up behind a unit of stabbers in your opponent's turn, and then you can countercharge them in your opponent charges the stabbers. So if your opponent charges the stabbers, you can just countercharge around them. There are so many options. It's going to be crazy. Strike first on these guys makes them amazing. Next unit we'll look at is your just traditional Moonclan Stabber. This is a massive unit of 20. Each one has got 1 health, and they do have a 5-up ward save. Sorry, 5-up armor save, and you obviously can give them a 5-up ward save. They move 5 inches, so a little slow, but because they're a big unit of 20, and very few units in this game, very few armies can have big units of 20, which obviously can be reinforced to a unit of 40, which you could put a 5-up ward save on, so it'll be great for contesting an objective, unless you're up against some other units. But, like, that's pretty good. And in combat, though, 2 attacks each. We know we can get at least +2 attacks on these guys, but they hit on 4s, they wound on 5s, they've got no rend. But you can, use some Fellwaters, use some rend from Gobbapalooza, potentially get additional rend on these guys. Could be quite interesting. I guess the real reason for this unit to exist is as a delivery system for Fanatics, in my opinion. They do have their own ability, which you do in any combat phase, called Netters, which means every combat phase, and you pick an enemy infantry-only unit, and roll a dice. On a 3+, you subtract 1 from hit rolls to the targets that attack, the target's attacks for the rest of the turn. So, they don't have Battle Shock anymore, so you do have to do all 40 damage, which is legitimately good. It's a lot of bodies you can put on the board. Depends how cheap they are. And they can have Fanatics inside of them that are doing counterattack that will do all the damage you need. So maybe they're the perfect unit for holding objectives. Who knows right now? I think for me personally, I would be looking at much more elite units that do a lot more stuff, but maybe there is a place in this army for just 40 dudes on an objective. Now, if you don't want to stab something, you can obviously shoot something, and the Moonclan Shooters is the same unit, a big unit of 20, 1 health, 6-up save, moves 5 inches, control 1, so they're going to be good for holding an objective. And maybe where they're better than the Stabbers is that they can project a little power at range, because your unit of 20 is going to have 2 shots each at 18 inches with their Moonclan blows, which hit on 4s and wound on 5s, tragic. You can get additional rend, and they do damage 1. They also have the netter ability, so if you end up in combat with them, they're going to make a -1 to hit. So if you are going to have a Fanatic delivery system, feels like the Shooters probably do the job slightly better, and you might be able to build like a massive unit of combat Stabbers, but it's going to be such incredibly hard work. I feel like the Shooters are more utility. Take them as multiple small units, use them as screens. I think that's the right way to go. Now we're going to start looking at spiders, so careful if you're scared of spiders. So first of all, we're going to look at Spider Riders, Unit 5. They have 2 health each with a 5-up armor save. They move 10 inches, which is kind of fast, although not thematically 8. And they have a control value of 2, so Unit 5 is going to be 10 on an objective, which is not too bad. They have a spider bow, which isn't very good. And the reason you would take them, if you're going to take them, is because of the Spider Fangs, which is 2 attacks per base, so 10 across the unit, that are 4s and 4s with no render damage 1, but they do have critical mortals. So Unit 5 is going to have 10 attacks, so you're probably going to get 2 critical mortals. Now, if you are under the light of the moon, it is going to happen on 5s, but it just isn't as much damage as some of the other units, in my opinion. They also, if you go down and look at the keywords, they don't have loads of keywords. They don't have the Squig keyword or the Moonclan keyword, so they can't benefit from loads of different abilities. Which seems like a real weakness to the army. Yeah, they've got Destruction, Gloomspite Gitz, Spider Fang. They don't even have Moonclan, right? And then finally, they do have the Wall Crawler ability, which lets them fly across terrain as if it wasn't there. But for me personally, I can't really see this being a unit that I'd want to take when everything else in this book is telling me to play the other units. The first of the big spiders we're going to talk about is the Skitterstrand Arachnarok, which is pretty unique. It's got 14 health with a 4-up save that moves 10 inches, control value of 5, good for holding objectives, massive base though, massive. In combat, I'm going to describe it as a little bit disappointing. It's only got 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, rend 1, damage 3, with crit mortals. So if it ends up being very, very cheap, it might be worth it, because it does have the ability to go into Deep Strike or to go into Reserve, thanks to the Realm Web Lurker ability. Don't forget there's also the ability, if you take the right battle formation, to put another unit in Deep Strike with it, which you could build some really fun combos about that. We'll talk about that in another video. And then you've got Ambush from Beyond, where you pick this unit, and then that allows you to just Deep Strike the unit, basically. So pretty nice. It's got the ability to move through terrain or fly across terrain using the Wall Crawler ability. But one of the reasons I think I would probably take this is because of the once per turn in any combat phase ability, Scuttling Terror, where if this unit charges turn, you roll a dice. On a 3+, it can move 2d6 inches. It can pass through the combat ranges of enemy units, and it can pass through models in enemy infantry units, but it must end that move in combat. And if it moves across infantry, they take D3 mortal wounds. Now, it does have a massive base, so you're probably not going to be able to like move through as much as you would think, but you probably can be in places you weren't expecting. And it really is making me think that this game is going to be super dynamic with all of these units being in places they shouldn't be, with counter charges and redeploys and all this other stuff. So it's going to be a really wild game. Ultimately, though, even under the moon, with this thing doing crit mortals, with its only base 4 attacks, this doesn't really have the juice that I really want for something to be that impressive. The next big spider can have a Spider Fang War Party on top of it with 16 health, 4-up save. It's like the other spider, but it has got a control value of 10. That's the reason that you're going to want to take this. Massive base, control value of 10, no ward save, but it's got a 10-up, moves 10 inches, a control value of 10. Other than that, like the other spiders, it's got a okay to kind of woeful attack profile, in my personal opinion. So it's going to stand on objectives, and it's going to also be massive. So everyone, their dog, their wife's cousin, people 3 doors down, and people across the sea are going to be able to attack this all at the same time because it's on a massive base. But there we go. Now it's got the ability to have slightly less attacks with its chitinous legs. If it's battle damaged, it can pass across terrain feats if it's had fly because of Wall Crawler, and it's got Voracious Predator as an ability, which is a rampage, which you do in any charge phase, which means you can do it in every charge phase if you charge in every charge phase. And you pick up to 3 enemy units within 1 inch of this, and you roll a dice on a 2+, do D3 mortal wounds. Gotta say, I'm a little bit underwhelmed with the Arachnarok Spider with War Party, because yeah, you can control an objective, but I can just web sling 2 Webspinner Shamans much easier, probably for a lot less points, and have a great time. But I am thinking, what if I was to have maximum Arachnarok Spiders? So like play like a Mega Gargant, but with Arachnarok Spiders. Just maximum. Don't know how many that is, but a lot. And then Arachnarok Spiders with Spider, and then I just keep standing them on all the objectives. You can't even get to them because the bases are massive, right? Now we're talking. So what I'm saying is getting one bad, but spend more money, throw good money after bad. You can get quite spicy on that. And then use the web spinners to jump to other objectives. Oh, I think you would literally be like netting the objective in a spider web of giant guys. The Arachnarok Spider with Flinger, which is kind of like an artillery monster piece, so it's got like a catapult attached to it. This is the best it's ever been in Age of Sigmar, and probably still not that great. It's got 16 health and a 4-up save, and it moves 10 inches. It's got a control value of 5. It's got the same attack profile as the other Arachnaroks and gets battle damaged. And and obviously can move over terrain as well because it's got the wall crawler. But the important thing to talk about is its Flinger. Its Flinger is a 24-inch shooting attack that does D3 shots they hit on 4s. Yikes. But it does have crit 2 hits, so any 6s are going to be 2 wound rolls. No rend damage 1, so terrible attack profile, as you said. What's the point in taking it, Rob? Well, it has a passive called Flinger. And if any attacks made with this unit's Flinger score a hit, after the shoot ability has been resolved, roll a dice. On a 2+, that's right, it's not automatic. You have to hit and then also roll a 2+ in addition. Seems a bit unfair. The target unit is entangled, and until the start of your next turn, halve the move characteristic of a unit while it's entangled. Now, if it made it so that it only charged on D6, maybe, or like you took 1 D6 away from the charge rolls, maybe that would be good. But I'm going to say it's not that impressive, in my opinion. So, not going to be taking that probably. And then it does have its own rampage, which is done once per turn in any combat phase. And if this unit is charged, which is normally bad times, you can roll a dice, and on a 3+, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of target's companion weapons for the rest of the turn. So it means if a big monster charges in, or some other companion weapons, some cavalry or something. But ultimately, I'm not super enthused. Now, we've saved a hero for last, which kind of feels odd, but Kragnos is this kind of unique unit that's usable across all destruction armies. But the first thing we're going to do, at least in this battle pack, Kragnos has got the Gloomspite Gitz keyword, which is pretty nice, because if you've got any abilities that can affect Gloomspite Gitz, it's going to affect this guy, which we love. He's also a hero, a monster, unique, War Master, and has got a 5-up ward save. So that's pretty good, considering he's got 18 health, a 4-up armor save, 5-up ward save, and has got a control value of 15, which is really good. He also moves 10 inches, and I've said multiple times in this video that he's got this special ability called the End of Empires at the bottom here, where you add 1 to the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls for friendly destruction units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit to a maximum of 3. Now, this is such a massive force multiplier that it feels so difficult not to bring Kragnos in some situations. So it really does depend if he's going to be cheap enough that yeeting all these units, your Boingrot Bounderz, for example, being able to charge 3d6 is going to make them absolutely fly, which is going to be very, very fast. In combat, he's also insane with 3 attacks that do damage D3 with crit 2 hits, 6 attacks with the Dread Mace, which are damage 4, and 6 attacks with the Hooves of Rack and Ruin, which are damage 2, for a pretty prodigious profile. Not quite as good as Trugg and the Troggboss, but still pretty nice. He also can ignore spells on a 3+, thanks to the shield in Violet. And he's also got the Avatar of Destruction, where he basically ignores auto-slay abilities like Nagash's Hand of Dust, and he would just take 6 damage instead. And lastly, he's got a once per turn ability in any charge phase, which is every charge phase, where if this unit charges this phase, you can pick one of the following effects. Roll a dice for each enemy within an inch on a 2+, they do that, they take that much mortal damage. However, if you're hitting a monster, you roll 2d6, and on a 7, nothing happens. However, on any other dice roll, you times 1 dice by the other dice, with the perfect situation being a 6 and a 6, and you do 36 mortal damage on the charge, as well as against an enemy monster, as well as then slapping them with all the melee weapons. So Kragnos is just this giant force multiplier, which you just plaster across an army that isn't doing very well, but in of itself is also just a good unit. He's great anti-monster because of that charge ability, and also is great in combat. So that is Kragnos, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the Gloomspite Gitz review. Do let me know what you have thought about this video and what other things you'd like to see me cover in the future. Points, tier lists, doing combos is all something that I'm going to try to cover in other videos, because I think that they need to be separated out other than just take you through all this information. Is there a way I can do these reviews better? Is there a way that I can do something more for you to enjoy? And a way in which you might help support the channel by joining up to the Honest Wargamer Patreon, subscribing, liking, or any of those other things. Let me know what I can do to bring you the best Age of Sigmar coverage I can, because that's what I want to do. And I hope you enjoy. playing with your Gitz and having a great time. Thanks for watching the video.